Ever get that feeling like your focus just kind of, you know,
Yeah,
slips away?
yeah,
Like you're reaching for something, but your hand keeps missing it.
totally.
Or your brain's just buzzing with a million thoughts all at once. Sound familiar?
Oh, yeah, I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that.
If that's you, stick around. You're definitely in the right place.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling attention deficit disorder, or ADD.
Right. And we're using this incredible book as our roadmap, Scattered Minds by Dr. Gabor Maté.
Exactly. This book is so insightful, and what makes it even more powerful is Dr. Maté's personal connection to ADD.
Yeah, he doesn't just write about it. He's been diagnosed himself.
Yeah.
And so have 3 of his kids.
So he's coming at this from both a professional and a deeply personal perspective.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're going beyond the simple explanations.
Right, like those ideas that ADD is just a matter of genetics or just bad parenting.
Exactly. Dr. Maté's work encourages a much bigger picture, more nuanced view.
He argues that ADD isn't simply a neurological glitch.
Yeah.
It's often shaped by early life experiences and even societal pressures.
Yeah, that's a big one. And for this deep dive, we're really lucky to have excerpts from Scattered Minds.
Plus, we've got some really compelling endorsements for the book.
Yeah, like McLean's called it a vital challenge to conventional thinking about ADD.
And the Winnipeg Free Press emphasized how helpful it is for adults and even adolescents.
Which is great because that often gets overlooked.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they highlighted how relevant it is for anyone curious about their own attention and impulsivity.
And the Georgia Straight, they focused on its caring and supportive approach.
And even the County Chronicle, they saw its value for both professionals
Right.
and individuals dealing with this in their personal lives.
So there's something here for everyone.
Definitely. And we can't forget Dr. John Rady. He's a leading voice in the field.
Oh yeah, he's a big name.
And he wholeheartedly recommends it to anyone touched by ADD.
Wow.
He really praised its research base, its human-centered approach. And he even mentioned the humor and compassion in the writing.
And that personal touch that Dr. Maté brings.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this rich foundation of praise for the book.
So where do we even begin with this deep dive?
Well, first we're going to untangle the nature of ADD,
Yeah.
as Dr. Maté explains it.
Right.
And then we'll explore all these fascinating areas, like brain development
Mm-hmm.
and the impact of family and societal influences, and even the meaning behind those classic ADD traits.
Right. Like what's really going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. And we'll look at the differences between children and adults with ADD.
And of course, we can't forget the whole medication question.
Yeah, and what it really means to be truly attentive.
Sounds like a plan. So let's dive right into the first chapter of Scattered Minds.
Okay. It's called So Much Soup and Garbage Can. Quite a title.
Yeah, it grabs your attention right away. And Dr. Maté starts by sharing his own journey of understanding ADD.
Makes sense. It wasn't just some detached observation for him.
Not at all. It was deeply personal. He actually started writing a series of articles on ADD for the Globe and Mail.
Interesting. What sparked that?
Well, it was a conversation with a social worker. She had just been diagnosed.
Okay.
And while he was writing these articles, he had this huge realization. He calls it his ADD epiphany.
Wow. Okay, so break that down for us.
Yeah.
What did he suddenly realize about himself?
It's fascinating. He describes this rush of elation and a flood of insight. He was excited, hopeful. It's like after years of feeling this internal chaos,
Right.
he finally found a framework that made sense of it.
Like pieces of a puzzle clicking together.
Exactly. He felt like he had finally pinpointed the source of these disruptive mental fragments that seemed to pop up out of nowhere.
That must have been so validating.
Incredibly, but
Yeah.
also a little unsettling.
Yeah. To suddenly see your own mind in a whole new light.
Exactly. And he talks about this duality, the relief of finally understanding, but also the pain of realizing how deeply these patterns had been shaping his life. He even compares the ADD mind to a deranged bird.
A deranged bird.
Yeah, it can't settle anywhere for very long.
Constantly flitting around.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's always seeking external distractions. Like he always needed to have a book.
To keep his mind occupied.
Yeah. That image really resonates, doesn't it? He talks about being terrified of my mind.
And always needing a book to escape, even in those little moments of waiting.
Yeah, like he couldn't just sit with his own thoughts.
So this points to a key aspect of ADD, right?
Absolutely. This constant internal restlessness and discomfort with one's own thoughts.
And that leads to all sorts of coping mechanisms.
Exactly, like the constant activity or the seeking of external stimulation that he describes.
So for Dr. Maté, this wasn't just some theoretical realization.
No way. This self-recognition had real-world implications. He could see how ADD explains so much about his life.
Like what?
Well, the chronic disorganization, for one,
Mhm.
and all those unfinished projects.
Makes sense.
Those bursts of enthusiasm that would fade away quickly.
Right.
Even his childish emotional reactions and a tendency towards workaholism.
It's amazing how many things can connect back to ADD.
It's a pretty big umbrella.
He's really honest about it all, too.
Brutally honest. He talks about everything from his addictive tendencies to his temper.
Wow.
And even the conflicts he had in his marriage and how he interacted with his children.
This is a full picture of himself, not just the clinical side of ADD.
Exactly. He even mentions his sense of humor, how it could be hit or miss.
Oh, I relate to that.
And his physical clumsiness.
Yeah.
Bumping into things, dropping stuff.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
It's almost a relief, right, to hear someone so articulate describe these quirks.
Well, it makes you feel less alone.
And it shows you that these seemingly random things might actually be connected to a bigger pattern.
So why is this broad self-recognition so crucial?
Well, it's about finding a story that makes sense of all these seemingly unrelated challenges. It helps dismantle that feeling of personal failure.
Because you finally understand why you might struggle with certain things.
Exactly. And it creates a framework for deeper self-understanding.
I think a lot of us struggle with that feeling of not living up to our potential.
Yeah, like there's something just out of reach.
And he really felt that, this sense of having talents or insights that he couldn't quite tap into.
Right. And for someone with undiagnosed ADD, that feeling of underachievement can be super frustrating and confusing.
And it can really damage your self-esteem.
Absolutely. So Dr. Maté's experience of understanding this disconnect is really powerful.
Okay, so what about his formal diagnosis? Did he just go to a doctor and get a clear answer?
Not exactly. It was interesting. He kind of became his own expert first.
Really?
Yeah, he did a ton of research on ADD before even seeking professional confirmation.
That's pretty remarkable.
It really shows you how important self-advocacy is.
Yeah, if you suspect you might have something, don't be afraid to do your own research.
Definitely. And you know, Dr. Maté was a physician.
True.
So he had a huge advantage in navigating the medical system.
That's a good point. Not everyone has that privilege.
Right.
Okay, so he uses this really vivid analogy to describe living with ADD.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
He compares it to a chaotic juggling act.
With way too many things in the air.
Exactly. You're spinning all these plates, frantically trying to keep them from crashing down.
And you just keep adding more.
Right. And he says that unlike a professional juggler who can choose which plates to keep up,
The ADD personality struggles to let go of anything.
so you end up in this constant state of overload.
Yeah. It's like a computer running too many programs at once. Everything slows down.
But you're afraid to close any of them.
Right, because you might need them later or something.
And then there's the whole thing about him self-medicating with Ritalin.
Even before his official diagnosis.
Wow.
Driven by this intense urgency.
He just needed relief right away.
And he describes that as being pretty common in ADD.
That need for instant gratification?
Right. And this part really struck me.
Yeah.
I mean, here he is, a doctor.
Right.
And he knows the risks of self-medication. But he still did it.
So what does that tell us?
Well, he talks about this desperate desire for a break from myself.
Wow.
One of his patients later said that.
That's powerful.
And his reaction to the Ritalin was really intense, euphoria. His wife even said he looked stoned.
It really highlights the powerful and immediate impact of these medications.
Yeah, they can be a quick fix. But, well, he realizes that this impulsive act contradicts everything he knows intellectually and professionally.
Interesting.
So it illustrates that disconnect between intellectual understanding and the ability to control your actions.
Which is a hallmark of ADD, right?
Exactly. But it also shows how deeply ingrained those patterns of impulsivity can be.
So was Ritalin the magic bullet he hoped for?
Unfortunately not. He did get some new insights and a temporary boost in focus.
Okay.
But those deeper patterns of his mind didn't vanish.
That's a bummer.
And get this, Ritalin actually made him feel depressed.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah, so he tried other stimulants, like dextrine.
Yeah.
It just made him a more efficient workaholic.
Okay, so this challenges the whole idea of medication being a simple cure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And his experience with Ritalin, plus his work with hundreds of ADD patients, led him to believe that medication is often given too much importance in treatment.
Like it's the only solution.
Right. He argues that ADD often starts as this complex interplay of societal and individual development,
Okay.
but it's been reduced to a purely medical problem.
So what's the alternative?
Well, this leads to his main point in this chapter. Healing from ADD isn't just about recovering from an illness.
Interesting.
It's a process of becoming whole.
That's deep.
He even points out that wholeness is the original meaning of healing.
Really?
Yeah, so instead of seeing ADD as a fixed neurological deficit...
That you just give medication to correct.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Maté views it as something more complex, more dynamic.
It's not just about brain chemistry.
Right. It's intertwined with your personal history.
Yeah.
Your environment.
So you're saying there's hope for growth and change?
Absolutely. At any age. Now, he's not denying the biological aspects of ADD.
Right.
He acknowledges that there can be malfunctioning neurophysiology.
Okay.
But he warns against reducing the whole experience to just brain chemicals and neural pathways.
Makes sense. It's more than that.
Right. He emphasizes the need for a patient and compassionate inquiry to understand the deeper meaning behind these ADD patterns.
So what about the whole genetics question?
Well, his own family's experience is really interesting.
All 3 of his kids have ADD, right?
Yeah, strong family history. But he doesn't believe it's simply passed down through genes.
Interesting.
He sees it more as a result of the environment and culture they were raised in.
Okay, so genes might play a role?
Potentially. But it's not the whole story.
So in this chapter, he's really challenging that traditional illness model of ADD.
Yes. And the idea that medication is a complete solution.
Right. It's not as simple as popping a pill.
He also briefly talks about the history of ADD.
How far back does it go?
Well, it's not a new discovery, though our understanding has evolved.
Makes sense.
And he criticizes the DSM-IV definition of ADD
Why?
because it focuses too much on outward behaviors
Right.
and not enough on the internal experience, the emotional pain. He actually quotes Dr. Daniel Siegel.
What did he say?
The DSM is concerned with categories, not with pain.
That's a really insightful quote.
It really gets at Dr. Maté's humanistic approach to ADD.
So focusing on the emotional pain is crucial.
Absolutely. And he shares that almost everyone he's met with ADD carries this deep emotional hurt.
Yeah.
You can see it in their body language, their humor, their interactions. He even mentioned someone who said, every aspect of my life hurts.
That's heartbreaking.
Dr. Maté connects with that pain. He's been there himself.
Okay, so he's not just observing this from a distance.
Right. And to illustrate this further, he shares an autobiographical sketch from John.
Who's John?
He was a 51-year-old unemployed man, and he had undiagnosed ADD.
Okay.
And John describes these lifelong struggles: focus, memory, emotional regulation.
It's a raw look at the daily challenges of an adult with ADD.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And heartbreaking.
So John was never diagnosed.
No. And he was constantly labeled as lazy and inattentive, criticized.
That has been so hard.
It really shows the emotional toll when you have ADD without support.
And his relationship with his father was difficult.
Really difficult. John always felt like a disappointment.
You can really feel the pain in his words.
Right. And it highlights how those external judgments become internalized.
Yeah, you start to believe those negative things about yourself.
Exactly. Leading to low self-esteem.
And he has this one line that's so powerful.
Which one?
He says, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired.
It's a perfect expression of that deep exhaustion that comes with ADD.
And then there's that amazing quote at the end of the chapter.
Yeah, about the soup and the garbage can.
Exactly. One of his patients said, my life is just so much soup and garbage can.
I know. It's such a strange image, but so powerful.
It really captures that feeling of chaos and confusion, like you're worthless.
And Dr. Maté points out how that imagery reflects a troubled soul.
Okay.
A mind that's had to fragment and develop these coping mechanisms just to survive.
So it ends on a really thought-provoking note.
It makes you feel a deeper empathy for people living with ADD. It's not just a bunch of symptoms.
Yeah. Okay, so to recap, what are the key takeaways from this first chapter?
Well, Dr. Maté makes it clear that ADD isn't just about bad genes or bad parenting. It's much more nuanced than that.
Right.
It's this complex combination of biology and lived experience.
We saw how Dr. Maté's own ADD epiphany changed everything for him.
Yeah, he finally understood himself, but it also brought up a lot of pain.
Because he realized how much ADD had affected his whole life.
Exactly. And he was really open about his struggles, the disorganization, the impulsivity, the intense emotions. and that frustrating feeling of not reaching his full potential.
And his experience with Ritalin really shows how knowing something intellectually doesn't always translate into action,
Right, it's that classic disconnect between knowing and doing.
which is so common in ADD.
And ultimately, this chapter lays the foundation for the book's main idea.
Which is,
True healing from ADD isn't about fixing a broken brain.
it's about becoming whole.
Exactly. So we leave you with this question.
Okay.
What's one small step you can take in your own life to understand those areas where you might feel that sense of chaos or unmet potential?
It's a great question to reflect on as we continue our deep dive into scattered minds.